you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to tonight's webinar, Diabetes Management and Mental Health. Before we begin, I would like to thank Abbott, Lilly, Medtronic, Novo Nordisk, and Ipsomed for sponsoring tonight's webinar. My name is Daphne Locke. I'm a social worker at the Trillium Health Partners Mississauga Hospital. I currently have been working in pediatric diabetes for the last 6.5 years. Our clinic has about 550 children and youth who have diabetes, mostly type 1 and some type 2 and some others. So I'm really excited to be here co-hosting with Kai and Kristen, Lindsay, and Jamie. And I'm going to hand it over to Kai to introduce yourself too.
Hi everyone, so I'm Kai and I'm also stoked to be here talking with you tonight about one of my favorite topics. I am also a registered social worker and a youth and family counselor in beautiful British Columbia, where I am now on Vancouver Island. I love living here. It really supports my mental health and well-being, being surrounded by nature and sunshine today, which was nice. So yeah, in my work as a counselor, I spend most of my time meeting and talking with folks of all ages about their mental health and how to support mental wellness. And I also live with type 1 diabetes. I have since I was 9 years old. And I also received a DHF scholarship when I graduated from high school, which was super meaningful for me. And so I love volunteering with this organization and giving back, connecting and supporting with other young people who are living and succeeding with diabetes. So happy to talk tonight with all of you and see what ideas we have together to share about diabetes and mental health. So on to our first question. Living with the emotional side of diabetes isn't always easy, as we know. Sometimes it feels like it's a challenging situation that requires a complicated solution. And when you can't figure out what to do, you may feel stuck and more overwhelmed. It's understandable if it's hard to find a balance between self-care, work, school, and maintaining what you can of a social life. And you might be sleeping less hours and lacking essential structure to your day with the times we're in now with COVID-19. So any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes it's better to approach the emotional challenges of type 1 and type 2 by keeping it simple. And sometimes we feel like we're stuck and we need some magical kind of answer, but it might be those simple things that actually kind of get us unstuck. So sometimes going to nature, like you were saying, Kai, reading a book, having a cup of tea, maybe really just talking to someone who knows and loves you and gives you that opportunity to vent a little bit can really help us out. So in addition to yourself, we have 3 wonderful panelists with us today, and I'd like to invite you to introduce yourselves. I don't know if Kristen, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen. I am a 2009 alumni. I received the Armel Family Fund Scholarship. I've been volunteering with DHF now for 11.5 years in various events and programs. I'm originally from Richmond Hill, living in Vaughan. I have a unique form of type 1 that was brought on due to issues with hypoglycemia and led to later developing diabetes and an anxiety disorder. I'm a child and youth care worker working with York Region District School Board at Red Maple Public School, working with kids with special needs. But right now, due to COVID, I'm working on the elementary virtual school platform. And like Kai, I have a huge interest in mental health, studying at Ryerson, it being one of my major parts of my background and something that I have a huge passion in. So.
Thanks, Kristen. Lindsay, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Lindsay, and I received my DHF scholarship back in 2016. I'm now in my final year of university, so I'm taking medical sciences at Brock in St. Catharines. I'm originally from Norfolk County, but I really like the Niagara region here, and I've been living with diabetes for 13 years now. And I have lots of hobbies that involve fitness, reading. I love school. I love to learn things, and I love like a pay it forward mentality. So I've been volunteering with DHF since.
That's great. Thanks so much, Lindsay. How about you, Jamie?
Hey everyone, I'm Jamie, as Daphne said. This is my second wellness webinar. I did one back in May, I believe. So I'm so happy to be back talking about mental health. I am a registered social worker and epilepsy educator at a small not-for-profit in Ottawa, Ontario called Epilepsy Ottawa. My main focus is very similar to DHF, sorry. Just focusing on the mental health of my patients and my clients and making sure that they're doing the best that they can in the times that we're living in currently. I received my Diabetes Hope Foundation scholarship in 2015, so just 1 year before Lindsay, down below me today. And I love doing this kind of stuff, and I'm so glad to be here.
Thanks so much. I think, Kai, you're going to start us off.
Okay, and so as we're now in December, we've been dealing with the pandemic now for 9 months. You can believe it. Cases are going up and everyone has been impacted by the pandemic in one way or another. And we're sure most, if not all of you, had some general concerns and anxieties about managing your diabetes and staying healthy and active during this time. So have any of your fears or hesitations changed from the first wave to the second wave of COVID? How about Lindsay?
I feel like not much of my own schedule has changed. During the first wave, I was living at my parents' house, and everyone in my family was deemed an essential worker, so I was the only one staying home. So it was a little nerve-wracking to have everybody leaving the house, and I was the only one that was like staying put. But it was nice because they were also doing the grocery getting, and they had very limited places they would be visiting. I find with the second wave, there's definitely more of a fear fatigue. So more people are like lenient about leaving their house, especially for like non-essential services. I mean, I would also include myself in that a little bit. I'm lucky enough to be in an orange zone, so I can still go to the gym. It is privatized and we have to do time slots. But I think my biggest fear is just because everyone's become so relaxed. People are no longer thinking it's as big of an issue as it is, but they don't know how it might impact somebody else. And that's especially important for us.
What about you, Jamie?
So I feel like things have changed a little bit for me between the first and the second wave of COVID. I was very, very fortunate to be able to head to the small town that I was raised in and live with my parents for almost 2 months, where my mom was a nurse and my dad was a mechanic, both essential workers as well. But being in a small town, the risk was quite a bit lower than being in a city center such as Ottawa, where I am currently. So that was a nice change and definitely relieved a lot of stress in my life because, again, like Lindsay said, I didn't have to go out and do the grocery shopping. I knew I was safe in my parents' house, and my contact was extremely limited. The difference between the first and the second wave for me is I have since moved back to Ottawa when things started to improve a little bit at the end of May. And I am now, again, living with my partner, who is an essential worker as well as a paramedic. So a whole different level of stress because as we reside in Ottawa, there's a lot more potential for contraction and contact with COVID-19 patients. So the stress level and the fear of that has kind of shifted in the sense that I'm definitely probably put more at risk living here than I would be safe in my tiny little bubble in my hometown. But it's a little bit better because I feel like there's less unknowns right now. We've kind of been through it once. We're heading in or involved in the second wave right now. So we've been through it once before. We got through it. So there's a little bit of hope at the end of the tunnel that things will improve once again.
That hope keeps us going for sure. It's an important ingredient. How about for you, Kristen?
So yes, being in York, I am in Orange, and being close to Toronto and Peel, so it can be scary. But to be honest, like the rest of the panelists have said, not much has changed. If I can think of one, like Jamie, my boyfriend is also an essential worker. Like me, he also works in the school board with Wire DSB in a similar classroom and with similar kids. I mean, back in the first wave, we were both at home, but now I'm at home and he's in school. His school did a couple weeks ago have 2 cases of COVID, but now since have been cleared. And just for any of the parents watching, you know, all teachers, EAs, support staff, everybody went through training right before school started on how to deal with COVID, including those of us online. And yeah, and to speak on his experiences, I know his kids and all the kids that are in school that are spec ed are contained. They don't interact with anybody else in the school, and you know, they're kept as safe as possible. And, you know, when he comes home, he makes sure he's safe and I'm safe, and especially the community we're in, being in a condo with primarily senior citizens as well, being a high population. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. So we all had to adapt pretty quickly when the lockdown came into effect in March of this year, when it came to managing our home life, work, school, and travel. Are there any changes in your day-to-day routine today that are different from the first wave, the second wave of COVID-19?
You want me to start first?
Sure.
First last time. I found, especially like living with my parents, I had a pretty relaxed schedule. So I definitely struggled with some diabetes management over anything else. Just because I definitely am a scheduled person. I like to do things in a timely manner, and I like to lay out kind of what I'm doing every day. So I found during the second wave, I've also moved back to St. Catharines in my student house. And although I have online classes, a lot of them are asynchronous. So I'm not online for any specific amount of time. I just kind of do it on my own, which has definitely taken a toll if I'm prioritizing certain things over others. I also find just like being in school with COVID, things are very, very different. And kind of like preserving your mental health and like how you function day to day, especially with diabetes management and burnout, is super important. So just taking a few minutes every day to kind of like get yourself in order, plan it reasonably. I like to do a lot of things at once. And I find being at home is definitely a struggle. But I think overall, like, it's just important to put yourself first. Everything.
Great suggestions. Okay, Jamie, thoughts on this?
So my routine between the now and the first wave hasn't changed a whole lot. I'm very fortunate to be able to work exclusively from home, using teleconference and video conference and all that great stuff. Even prior to COVID, I was working part-time from home anyways. So it was a little bit of an adjustment, but nothing huge because I was pretty well set up to work here. In terms of the mental health aspect of working from home and not having the routine, like Lindsay mentioned, it has been quite a challenge to force myself to get into a routine, waking up at a certain time during the week, setting up my day of work more specifically, rather than being a little more la-di-da all over the place. It's definitely a challenge because you know, you don't have the opportunity to drive to work and drive home, and maybe some people think that that's a blessing that we don't have to do that right now because traffic, depending on where you live. But it has been a little bit difficult adapting to not having any set times to do specific things. Diabetes management has kind of fluxed a little bit between back in March and now. At the beginning, it was great. I had so much time to focus on, you know, keeping things in order, carb counting, doing all of this great stuff. But as I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, diabetes burnout in conjunction with being stuck inside during a pandemic can be quite taxing on the mind. And as easy as it is to say that your diabetes management should improve, that's not necessarily the case. So I've gone up and down a little bit, but always swinging back up to the top of the hill at the end of the day.
Thank you. How about you, Kristen?
So obviously with school, during the first wave, us support staff were limited to the amount of work we were doing. Now that sort of the schedule's been modified and we're more involved, I'm spending a lot more time online, working with a different group of kids than what I'm used to. Different break schedule. It's not as fast paced, say if I was in the building. Excuse me. It's different in terms of resources and what you have available online to help support the students, but we do the best we can, every day. Diet, because I used to eat a lot when I was working, I've sort of changed my diet, modified, changed insulin, basal, bolus, all that changed. Exercise, getting outside. I'm lucky to be right behind a park. So getting out to walk, even when it's cold, and then, trying to switch to online workouts and stuff when it gets cold and you don't want to go outside. In terms of other things, I still go do the groceries. I still go to places like Walmart and do my errands, but I only go for an hour. We're in and out within an hour, have a list, try to follow the list of the things we need and get it done. And, that's basically it. And then just have fun at home with everything being obviously shut down and not being able to do the things we used to, like going to movies and stuff. So trying to do a lot more from home for sure.
Thanks so much to everyone for their insights. I'm hearing a lot of themes there in terms of being flexible, trying to have routines, but needing to adapt, modify what you're doing. And I certainly, on my end, I hear that as well. And what you were saying, Jamie, is so interesting about you would think that it would make your management easier. And certainly we had a couple of kids, I can't speak so much to the university and older, but people are like, oh, wow, it's amazing. I can bolus before I eat. I can take the time to count carbs. And then about 6 weeks later, it's like, well, So I think the reality of COVID is that yes, some opportunities, but also real life, right? So you've already mentioned some changes in terms of virtual learning and some flip-flopping, depending on what's happening in the workplace. And I think one of the big things is that there's so many virtual meetings or teleconferences for some people, and we're not having that social connection. There's no coffee break. There's no, in between classes or whatever. So I feel that a lot of the mental health impact has been really heightened. Like not only is it the sort of, I guess we'd call it routine risk of diabetes burnout, but there's also the COVID burnout, which, you talked about the fatigue as well. So I'm curious how, some of the loneliness of being isolated and distanced from family and friends. I'm wondering about the impact of that and how you're coping with that, like maybe some of the strategies that you've used to reduce that isolation or that, inability to hug people. So, and Lindsay, you don't have to go first. Maybe you can switch it up. Do you want to go backwards? Maybe Kristen, do you want to start?
Sure. So I'm still close to my family. I'm not too far away, but obviously not being able to see them is tough. I do communicate with them every day, either by phone or FaceTime to check in. It's especially hard right now for my family because 3 months ago, I lost my grandfather who was 102 and a half.
Wow.
But, when you look back on it, like he lived on his own for 15 years. He drove a car till he was 99. He lived in his own house. All these things that, we just remember and keep in mind, and all the memories I have, especially when I was little and him taking me for walks and tap dancing with me, just keep those in mind. Obviously friends, social media, phone calls as much as possible, work. I'm obviously, like you said, isolated from my homeschool, so try to keep in touch with them as much as possible. And then, strategies I've been using, just, communicating with my support systems, family, friends, boyfriend, have my cat here. And then just, creative outlets, entertainment, whatever can help.
Wonderful. It all sounds really good. How about you, Jamie?
So Can you repeat the question just so I can give you guys a clear answer?
Yeah, sorry. I said a lot. So it's about the social isolation that has come with COVID and changes in workplaces and ability to meet with people. So how have you stayed connected or broken through some of that loneliness that might be happening?
So I feel like a lot of people are scared of loneliness because it's lonely. You don't know how to get out of it. And I have definitely experienced that a lot. It's just my boyfriend and I living here. He works 12s. He works for many shifts in a row. So I found myself being at home for 3/4 of the day a lot of the time, sitting on my computer, just working on my phone, just kind of lost in a tech black hole, which almost makes you more lonely, even though we have Instagram and stories and all those great things. It almost exacerbated my loneliness by seeing all the other things that people were doing and people who were staying with their families and living close by to them. It almost made it worse. But in terms of staying connected, I have really, really made a solid effort to, FaceTime with my parents pretty much every day. I've reconnected with people I went to high school with who were my best friends and are my best friends. And I am incredibly thankful for the technology that has allowed us to do this. We've set up virtual movie nights and rewatched some old classics that we did when we were kids and had a good chuckle about that. So it's just about finding new ways and the new normal to do things. And that's something that we enjoyed was movie nights and, having girls' nights together. And we still got to do that. And we still had laughs and all that great stuff. But it's still different at the end of the day when you can't physically be close to someone. And depending on the type of person you are, that can be a really vital part to relationships. But in terms of other stuff, I've been listening to audiobooks. I've just kind of been occupying my mind with positive and good things. Music is another huge one for me to kind of combat loneliness in addition to baking. I know diabetic and my favorite thing to do is baking. Who would have thought? But so just all sort of just positive things in my life just to kind of get me through the day and move on to the next. And we just got a puppy. So that helps very, very much in terms of being lonely because I'm busy all the time now.
Wonderful.
As we know, stress and blood sugar go hand in hand too, right? So it sounds like lots of great ideas for how to just lower stress, manage stress, which can help our diabetes as well, right? Really awesome. So Daphne, go ahead.
No, that's great. I love it. Lindsay, did you want to jump in?
Sure. So I find I'm grateful that I live with roommates, so the social isolation is kind of kept at bay. It is a little different with not seeing my family, but my mom and I always talk across Facebook Messenger since our signal is awful where they live. And she works kind of funky shifts, so she can kind of just get back to me and it's like a continuous conversation all the time. My one grandfather, he loves to call me. Our conversations only last about 2 minutes, but he'll call me 5 times a week. And it's definitely super comforting because I can't see him in person. So to know I'm thinking about him and he's thinking about me, even though I'm not home, is fantastic. And then I'm part of my university's powerlifting team, and we would send in team training videos. So they would take videos of themselves lifting at the gym. And then everybody kind of chimes in their feedback, but we just kind of have a continuous loop on Facebook Messenger again. But it's nice because you get to see what everybody's doing in their spare time. We all have it as the same hobby. So we're all still able to kind of enjoy something we like to do that we would normally do together. But this is as best as we're gonna get together. So that's also kind of comforting because it's something we would always do anyways. And we just kept that going.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm hearing those lovely connections with or reconnections with people, reinventing things that maybe you used to do in a new way and being creative, which it takes a lot of energy. And, some people estimate it that when you have type 1 diabetes, you have to make about 180 health-related decisions every day, which can have a huge impact, as you all know, way more than I do, on your mental health, your energy level. Just takes up a lot of bandwidth in here. So, some stats say that about 30% of people who have diabetes report some kind of depression episode in their life. And mental health is therefore a really important thing to maintain. I'm wondering if you believe that there's a relationship between diabetes and mental health. And if so, can you speak a little bit about that and what maybe you have done to manage those two pieces? Maybe some tips about what works for you. Kristen, do you want to start?
I can say it does. For the fact that 2 years ago, I went through probably one of the toughest times in my own lifetime. And I know it had a huge impact on both my diabetes and my mental health. For example, whenever I had anxiety attacks, my sugars spiked and it took so long for them to come back down. There would be nights with lack of sleep, and that lack of sleep caused me to feel groggy and sick the next day, and often irritable. Sometimes if I was at work and a problem occurred, I'd have to leave and go home, and I'd be off the following day getting in touch with, say, my psychologist, or trying to get in touch with my diabetes team to figure out, what's going on, what can I do to change things and make things better for me. What worked, obviously, again, communicating with my support system, family, friends, boyfriend, creative outlets. Jamie said music, art, journaling. I'm a poet, so being able to put that into creative use is always good. Change in routine, sometimes your strategies don't always work, so it's always good to have a repertoire or a number of different things you can go to when you're in those anxious or hard moments that you can sort of help alleviate some of those feelings that you have.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Jamie, do you want to chime in?
I 100% know that there is a link between mental health and diabetes. Once you live with it for a long time, or not even a long time, it doesn't really matter how long you've had it for. Just the constant decision making and potential worrying can wear you down over time. Some ways that I have tried to kind of improve my mental health around my diabetes has been surrounding myself with a community of people that also live with diabetes. Diabetes Hope Foundation has been a huge part of that through getting the scholarship and all that great stuff over the past 5 or 6 years since that has happened. And then also I have discovered this entire community of people living with diabetes online on social media, and seeing them motivates me. That's all I can say is just, it kind of puts a spark under you again and says, you know what, if they're doing it, I can do it. They're doing this cool thing. Maybe I can try that out to see if it works for me. And in addition to that, when I was a kid, I went to diabetes camp for a very long time. So I was able to build a lot of connections with people there. So I know I have a support system to lean back on in the community if I need it. I went back to the camp a couple of years ago. Again, it's put a spark under me again, because nothing inspires me more than seeing young kids just absolutely live their best life living with diabetes. Nothing kind of brings life into me more than seeing them succeed and them have success in life. So it's all those little tiny things, and it mostly comes from the type 1 diabetes community. Honestly, they inspire me every single day.
I think that's so wonderful. And I wish I could bottle that, because we're always encouraging kids and youth who are even remotely interested in camp to please just try it. Because when you find a community, that connection, you can't replace it, right? Like it's sometimes you can try to create it, but when you're in camp and you're immersed, right? Like it's nothing like it. Lindsay?
So I find I've been diabetic for a few years, like everybody else. And diabetes burnout definitely can get the best of you just because there's always changes. It's not a perfect science. Especially I found with COVID, I had good temporary basals, and I knew how to bolus properly. And then as COVID progressed, and then moving back into my student house, all of my patterns have changed. I've had fluctuating blood sugars. I've had to figure it out. But I find what helps most in managing stress for me, I like reading. I do it for relaxation. I like learning, so I don't mind reading my textbooks at all as much as other students might hate it. I quite enjoy reading, learning, all of those things. I also enjoy cooking. I'm not the greatest, but I give it my best shot. And it was helpful kind of with our social aspect. There was a group that started on Facebook where my parents live. And people were basically just putting their pictures up and recipes for people to try while we were in the first lockdown. So I've been going back through there, and I've been kind of like looking at other people's, because I'm like, if they can do it, I can probably do it. So in my spare time, cooking takes up a lot of time. So if you don't have much to do, that's fantastic. And then with us being in an orange zone, I do have a love of the gym. So I'm very grateful that I can still go to the gym. I have 90 minutes. I could go every day if I wanted to, as long as my COVID screening is negative. And I find that it definitely helps alleviate some built up stress and some of the loneliness that comes from being stuck in your house. I'm also very grateful that Brock University has the best mental health services for students in Ontario. So I'm not afraid if anything were to happen. I have somebody that I can go to seek professional help. And I feel like I do have a large support system. So I can kind of like rant off when my diabetes isn't going great. And a lot of my friends, I've picked up on diabetic memes. I'm not sure if anyone else has seen them, but especially with like blood sugar fluctuations about lows and highs, and they understand it now. So it's nice to share that with someone else.
I think the one thing we can all agree on that all the panelists have talked about throughout all the webinars is the fact that, like you said, the recipes, the cooking, the baking, sweets, I think that's been like a common theme where we all have like gotten into that since we've been in COVID.
Out here on the West Coast, it's been how to make sourdough bread. That's what everyone wanted to do. I don't eat that. I don't eat gluten or wheat, but what can we do instead? You guys have some wonderful ideas of, it's really inspiring to hear what you're doing, and just, how clear you sound about how you've been thinking about this and being proactive. So thanks so much for your sharing. Daphne, was there another one, or it's on to?
No, it's on to you, my friend.
So on that note, I've heard mention of fear. So when we talk about, diabetes, mental health, COVID-19, there's some fear there to acknowledge. And it's a time where we can be feeling vulnerable. And one thing we've noticed is that there's a lot of misinformation going around about COVID-19, or even just a lot of information in general coming at us that could be kind of confusing or overwhelming. So, how do you balance these things? Social media, minimizing news feeds, while also getting the latest information.
So I would say I'm definitely guilty of being one of those people that like being at home looking in on information. But I personally stick to some of the reliable journalists out there that work for, say, like CTV or City TV, Colin DeMello, Cynthia Mullican. These are people that go to Premier Ford's press conferences and usually will have the information as it goes. So I usually tune into those. The school cases, Ontario has a cases website for schools and daycares. So it's always nice to see, where things are happening in the schools and checking in with people I know from other schools to say, hey, how's it going? Is everything okay? And then obviously just putting positive stuff on my social media because like animal videos and funny things, just because while I am in COVID and I am at home, I did sign a contract with the board to say, you know, that our social medias are to stay professional and positive. So, you know, something I try to keep 100% on.
I'll go next. So in this circumstance, I fortunately do not have cable, so I do not have the access to just turn on the news whenever I feel like it, or just to turn it on for background noise. I feel like that can turn into a rabbit hole really quickly because they just repeat the same things over and over again so everyone can hear it. So I do not have cable, so I don't get it firsthand. However, I work with two lovely ladies who fill me in on our Monday meeting every single Monday and tell me what's going on in the COVID world and anything that I need to know. In addition to that, the city of Ottawa has a really detailed kind of COVID overview of what's going on specifically in the Ottawa area, that if I am curious about what the numbers are doing or anything like that, I know I can go there and have the most recent and up-to-date information and make kind of my day-to-day decisions on whether I'm leaving the house or whether I'm not, based on that information.
Sounds like some good strategies. How about for you, Lindsay?
I'm kind of in the same boat as Jamie. I don't have cable or TV at my house. So a lot of my downtime would be on Netflix, not watching the news. If I do need any kind of important information, my professors have been pretty good at updating us, just putting like announcements on our school page and giving us resources, like reputable resources, to kind of stay on top of it. And then for us, like Niagara Regional Health will have anything that's specific to our area. So I feel like those are kind of the two most important. So if I'm not leaving the area where I live, I don't think I necessarily have to be concerned with what's going on outside of where I live if I'm not going to travel there. But I've also learned to kind of tune out some people who may be spreading misinformation, or I've tried to educate them on some of the reputable sources that they could also be using. But for my peace of mind, I've just been limiting the amount of like information I'm seeing on social media, and then potentially on the radio. I find that's also normally a good place.
Awesome. So, you know, when we have uncertainty or we have lots of different information coming our way, you know, that can create some uncertainty or confusion. Fear is a normal reaction to this. And although I think you've been touching on it, maybe I'm curious, you know, more directly, what would be your number one recommendation of a strategy or coping strategy or support you've been using to manage fear and the stress that causes? Kristen, any thoughts on that?
Again, communication with family, friends, my boyfriend, anybody I know that works in the school board, creative outlets, journaling, drawing, coloring, creative forms of entertainment. So Dancing with the Stars had a really good season on this year, which I was really happy with, Canadian one, by the way. And yeah, just focusing on being present, mindfulness, appreciations, affirmations, that sort of thing that we hear about but don't necessarily touch on a lot. So yeah.
Very nice. For you, Jamie?
So managing fear, it can be, I find it challenging. I find my brain thinking of night of all potentially the negative things, but I have found just that positive self-talk and kind of like Kristen was talking about, that very mindfulness-based thinking can be really, really effective. And it's been working really amazing since the beginning of this for me. Just reminding myself that, you know, my home is safe. I make conscious decisions about where I'm going. Like I kind of mentioned in the last question, I check things out before I leave, and I can kind of rest easy at night knowing that I have done everything on my part to limit the spread and keep myself as safe as I possibly can. Of course, there's no perfection in this world we live in right now. We're learning every single day about how we can do better. So I've just been managing my fear by doing everything that I can on my end to be safe and keep those safe around me.
Thank you. How about you, Lindsay?
I definitely agree with the other two here. I think talking to people and having meaningful conversations is really important right now. I also think that any kind of actions you have should be mindful, and you should be aware of what you're doing, but with the intent of bettering yourself. So especially, and I know it's not applicable to all people if you're in a lockdown. But if there's any way that you can get any sort of activity in, just going for a walk for 10 minutes outside, if you can still go to a gym, or you have weights, or you have things that you can substitute, there's lots of amazing YouTube videos on Pilates and yoga, and at home, like body weight workouts. And I think just doing things to stay active or to release kind of your thoughts through creative outlets, like Kristen said, kind of anything to release your happy hormones definitely helps right now with everything that's going on.
Very
I
nice.
think, yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Kai.
No, over to you.
Okay. I just wanted to say I'm so inspired by the fact that everyone's doing their best to continue to do things to be finding that calm to kind of combat those fearful feelings. And I'm curious, now that we're in the second wave and, you know, we hear about things like vaccines and things, and we maybe feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, I'm wondering if there's been any silver lining in all of this experience for any of you. You know, has there been something that maybe surprised you or came out that, wow, I wasn't planning for this, but this is something positive that's come out?
I can go. I'm finding right now, especially since people are experiencing seasonal affective depression, we have limited daylight hours, the home isolation, your energy matters. So as much as it's not always sunshine and rainbows, definitely invest your time and energy into the things that you like to do, the people you want to talk to, or the people that inspire you. And just create like an environment for growth and learning. So if you feel like you're having any kind of like doubts or setbacks, you have supports along the way, and you've already kind of set yourself up that you have been productive. And you just treasure the energy you have, because some days you won't.
I guess I'll go next. So silver linings for me is I've had the time to continue to make meaningful connections and rekindle connections with people I may not have spoken to for a while, just out of the busyness of life pre-COVID. So I really want to continue maintaining those relationships, and I've had time to invest in them and to get closer to my family. And I've always been close with my family, but never like this, because it's a little bit of a scary world that we live in right now. So I think we value the ones that we love even more, and it's just all about perspective for me right now, and seeing the positive in things, and knowing that, you know, I'm safe at home, my family's safe at home, and so are my friends, and just, you know, taking that to heart and appreciating it just for a minute. It's my silver lining of this whole situation.
Nice.
And last but not least,
I would totally agree with both of you on what you said. Those are definitely silver linings for me. Some other ones I think of, like I said in one of the previous questions, 2 years ago, I went through a major mental health period. And just looking back at it now, I'm able to deal with situations a lot better. I'm in a lot better position. One thing that hasn't been mentioned that I think I mentioned in a previous webinar is having a pet. Pets can sense emotions and can sometimes help calm emotions. So having Oscar, my Devon Rex cat, is always helpful. And he's sort of my buddy here during the day when I'm by myself. So it's always nice to have, a little friend walking around. And we talk a lot about things going on in the community. One thing going on right now for anybody in the GTA is at Hillcrest Mall, they're doing a street eats market, which is you can go walk up to these food trucks that they have here at Hillcrest Mall, and they will be here for till next year, I believe, and order food. And the money goes to help Pass the Plate, which is an organization right now that's, I guess, giving food to or donations to food banks and other people and charities that need, good meals and stuff. So if you can, try to go out and support your local businesses if you can, including these food trucks.
That's fantastic. I'm hearing a lot of doing things that are rejuvenating, keeping your energy positive, bringing a little spark, which is just wonderful. And I'm so thankful to our panelists and to my co-host. As we wrap up tonight's webinar, I just wanted to say that it's important that people aren't alone. I know that maybe some people would like to jump on and chat with us, and I'd love to do that for like hours and hours, but of course, we don't have that capacity to do today. So I just wanted to remind everyone out there, the Diabetes Hope Foundation does have a way to connect with people. Youth have a peer, or I guess it's called a peer support program, and that mentorship program is there for people to connect with other people who understand what it's like. I'm probably the wrong person to say understand what it's like that way, but I really always promote, that connection piece. So if people are interested, they can go on the website, learn more about it, look at the profiles of people, choose someone who maybe they want to get to know. I know I'm always trying to connect our youth, and we just had one last week who I was able to introduce. And so there's a budding friendship there, which is really exciting to deal with some of those isolation issues too, and just promote really good mental health. So thank you everybody so much. Kai?
Yeah, and thank you once again to our sponsors tonight. We couldn't do this without you. Abbott, Lilly, Medtronic, Novo Nordisk, and Ypsomed. We'll see you all next Wednesday for our winter travel inspiration webinar at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we hope that you all have a great evening and stay safe, everyone. Thanks so much for being here tonight to talk with us.
Thanks.
Thank you.